All right. Just so that you're both aware, I've started a recording on this
Okay.
meeting.
And Natraj is not responding, so
Yeah, he didn't
maybe.
respond to my text either.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I think we've given Nataraj enough time. I'm going to share my desktop. Okay. Let me know once you can see it in this document.
I
I
can
can
see.
see it now.
Okay, great. Um, well, as I've just so that you're aware, Sandeep, I've already gone over a lot of this with Mukta, but it is pretty deep and complex. So there's actually a lot to cover, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to every single bit of it. But my hope on this meeting is to have a start and to give you guys things to look for, to troubleshoot in case there are issues, and I want to give you a general idea of sort of what's going on with what we're calling network location protection, or AKA multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, right. So, Dan, here is what I think I would like to cover on this. So, first thing, I think you need to explain the architecture of this, like where exactly this fits in and between which all technologies. Once you show the architecture of it, Then it comes to the configuration, what we customized in terms of FADV, and then like how to enable and what are our day-to-day things that to manage this one, and any kind of a troubleshooting things. Like if this 1 hour is not really enough for us to cover all of these, let us split the agenda into 2 meetings or 3, whatever is required. But let us make sure that we cover these things, like starting from the architecture of it.
Okay. Well, the architecture can really be shown in a little bit of my Visio that I created for Skype for Business. Let me bring that up. Okay. Okay. Um, Now, this doesn't include everything, but the big thing to understand here, and this doesn't have the internal stuff on it, so is that everything through ADFS processes through our web application proxy servers. So similar to Skype for Business, and it actually handles ADFS authentication. So any external requests or requests from Office 365 specifically go through our web application proxy servers and are ultimately directed to our internal ADFS servers. That's NOAM IND01 Fed 100 and Fed 101. Those two servers are the internal IP address is 10.74.95.37 and 38. Those these two servers are really the power servers that supply ADFS and associate the the Office 365 ID with our internal Active Directory, and gives us the ability to sign into Office 365 using our ADFS accounts. So let's go into them, or into one of them. I don't have all the architecture for this in a Visio, but I can put that together so that we can sort of see it better visually. So, but as I stated, the web application proxy servers host our connection from Office 365 to ADFS and allows for the processing. The web application proxy servers are in a work group, and they're not tied to our domain, but they're allowed via routing rules internal to our ADFS servers, which are actually on our host domain. From there, ADFS has been set up already with Active Directory, as you're aware, and that's how it facilitates our authentication. Now, what we've done is we've essentially added another layer to this authentication, and that is using certificate services. The main server for certificate services is NOAM IND01 PKI1. This server is housing our certificate services and ultimately issuing certificates to the chosen VDI servers that we've set up. Within certificate services, it's also been certificate services has been integrated into Active Directory. And the way that we can see that is by looking at the enterprise PKI. Some very important things to note is that the certificate for this CA has been pushed out to our organization, and that's just a part of setting it up in the first place. The certificate revocation list is being updated daily and pushed to the Active Directory settings so that anybody that can talk to AD will be able to pick up when a certificate has been revoked. And then finally, as a backup, if you will, IIS has been installed on this system, and we have the generated certificates and revocation lists being copied to a virtual directory which is being hosted out of IIS, so that in case for whatever reason a user account is having a problem connecting to Active Directory, they can go over the secure website and still see their CRL. So, but from as it stands, we have, the web application proxies. We have two ADFS servers that are, hosting ADFS. We have now a certificate server, PKI1, that is responsible for issuing our certificates and keeping track of our certificate revocation list, which is when a certificate's revoked. And then finally, we have a group policy that actually pushes out certificate updates using local loopback processing. So to specific VDI systems that we define via a group. Has everything I've said made sense so far?
Yes, yes, Dan. And what is that policy? Can you open the group policy and explain that? So
Sure, of course. Okay, now this group policy was put in our Active Directory via and modified via two different change controls. And the policy is called PKI Personal Certificate. And it has been created in the root domain and then pushed to our child domains through the same policy. That way we only have to modify one policy in one location and it affects everything in our organization. Now, one of the things that you'll notice... Go ahead.
is that by defining the scope, Dan, or anything else you did to do that, to push it to those child domains?
Well, no. I mean, I basically just created it here in the fadv.net forest root. Then I pushed the same certificate to the root of, I might have pushed it to FADV, to the FADV organizational unit. Let me see. I did document the places where I put this certificate, this group policy
Mm-hmm.
in the place, but I know there, and that I put it at the root in APAC. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that, as I stated before, this has local loopback processing enabled. And what local loopback processing does is it applies essentially user settings at the computer level. So when that's enabled, what happens is that it will basically, whenever a user logs into a computer that matches what the settings for this are being pushed to, it will replace the user settings with the ones defined. And if we look, put it under security. If we look under the public key policies, this is where we can actually see what's being pushed. And basically, this just tells the system to look for the Active Directory policy. And this is the auto enrollment policy, which renews expired certificates, updates pending certificates, and removes revoked certificates. So basically, with these two things set, what happens is that the computer in question will reach out to certificate services and pull a certificate automatically. So, and by applying it at the computer level and not the user level, what will happen is we can essentially restrict where a user can actually request a certificate from. So on specific servers, and if you'll look on the security on this group policy, you'll notice that I created a group called Net Protect Servers to apply the policy to. There are really two groups that we've created for this: Net Protect Servers and Net Protect Users. So the Net Protect Servers is where we're actually going to put the VDI server computer accounts into, so that it will restrict where this group policy applies. And then the Net Protect User group is where we're going to put the user accounts, and that's going to be applied at the certificate service level, so that it knows that a user of that group can actually request a certificate. So we're essentially separating this out in two pieces. Now, the Net Protect Servers group has not been populated yet, because I still need to get the list of VDI servers that we're going to populate it with, and then this group policy will become active at that point on those servers. And then what we would need to do is populate the user group with the users, and then the users will have rights to request the certificate in the first place.
Sorry, Dan, I got disconnected and I'm back.
Okay. Did you what I was trying to say is that we essentially have two groups. One group is for Net Protect Servers, and only computer accounts will go into that group, and thus the group policy will apply only to those specific systems. The second group is for the user accounts, and that will actually allow them to request a certificate and put them into the group whereby they will have multi-factor authentication applied.
Okay, so in that case, if I'm talking about in terms of a terminal server, we can add, is it what that we can add them to the computer-based policy so that user do not require any further steps? Is that correct?
Basically, what we have to do is we have to add all of the VDI computer accounts. You know, whether it's a terminal server, it still has a computer account in Active Directory to the group. Then what will happen is that the group policy will apply to those servers only. Then what you have to do is you have to add the VDI user to the user group, and that user group allows them to request a certificate, number one, and number two, it also assigns them to multi-factor authentication on ADFS.
So does it mean that you need to be adding the VDI server and the user for it to be working? Is that correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah. What are those groups? Is it like a single group in FADV.net, or do we have that group created in all the subdomains?
No. It's a single universal group. So any user or computer within our organization can be added.
Okay. So I still have a doubt on like how we are pushing this to the subdomains. I see the policies on the FADV.net and I see it on APAC, but I don't see it on NoAM. So how exactly is it working? Is that two different policies, or is
no?
There
it's the exact same policy, since it has a universal group applying. What'll happen is that as like so. Say, for example, we don't, you know, I'm not aware of any VDI servers on the NoAM domain. So I just applied it to the APAC domain because I thought that's where we were going to start out from.
That's right. So yeah, that's fine. Not a problem. Like we can always apply if it is required. So my question is this. Is it the same policy we created in two domains, or is there any relation between the policy on FADV.net and APAC.FADV.net?
There's no difference. It's one policy, and it's like putting a shortcut on two different servers to the same file.
That means you have a certificate file, but you created policy with the same name on two domains.
No, I'm trying to liken this to an example. Say you have a file on a file server. You create a shortcut to that file on computer A and computer B. Both can access the same file.
Right.
This is the same thing. You create the group policy on FADV.net, your root. Then what you do is you take that group policy and you can apply it to NoAM, EMA, APAC, or SCRN.
Yeah, I got that. I understand that as well. So I just asked this because there is no interrelation between the policy in FADV.net and APAC.FADV.net. They're just like a standalone shortcuts to the file what we have.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So essentially, it pushes the certificate via the policy that's set up in here, and then we can apply it to any domain. Once the VDI server has been added to the server group, then it will immediately take effect, and users logging in will start requesting certificates. But they'll only get a certificate if they're actually in the group to receive one. Does that make sense?
Yes, and to make it more clear, if I need to enable it on NoAM, all that I have to do, create a new policy in NoAM, and
you don't create a new policy. You just create the shortcut to the same policy.
How is that? Like, can you show me?
Sure, of course. Exactly all you have to do is link an existing GPO. Then you choose your parent domain, and then you choose your group policy to link.
I got it. I got it. So you created the group policy object only in FADB.NET and you're linking it to the other domains, right?
That's correct.
Okay, okay,
Just like
okay.
you create a shortcut for a file on multiple systems.
I got it now. I thought like you created it separately on the domain. So now it's clear.
Okay. So, but yeah, just it's, I sort of like that because then you modify the GPO in one location, and then once it's modified, it's automatically pushing to everything.
And you know what? I think this is our maybe one project we can do. We can consolidate all the policies in FADB.NET and link it as required on the domain. So
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
might need to, yeah, we might need to look for that maybe a later
Well,
stage.
and this is kind of a best practice thing too, to do it
Exactly.
this way.
Sure. Yeah, we actually did a. I'm taking away from the agenda, but let me take 1 minute there. So we actually had a wrap done for the group policy, and this was one of the finding. So it was never done, but we will focus on that as well. So yeah, I'm good. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and just to let you know, I've also set up other group policies the same way when I've been doing it. So, um,
That's right.
but anyway, so we have the group policy. We have the universal groups created that can take user or computer accounts from any of our domains in our forest. And so next, what we want to look at is the certificate services itself. And really, if you've looked at my documentation at all, that's where the primary focus of my documentation has been. It's on the certificate services because it's so integral. Because without certificate services, none of this works. So, we have issued certificates here, revoked certificates, and we can view pending. And we can also look at certificate templates. Now, one of the things that I did was I changed the security on some of the certificate templates in AD so that they could not be necessarily requested, because I didn't want a certificate requested unless I knew knew where it was going. So this FATV username is the template that I created for issuing certificates to our users. It issues for 1 year. It actually publishes the certificate in Active Directory, and it doesn't automatically re-enroll if a duplicate certificate automatically exists. This is important because we don't want every time that they log in to get a new certificate on the system. We want to keep it clean. And we want to keep it clean in AD, which that ultimately does. Now, as far as the compatibility level, I set it lower because I was concerned that there might be some older systems out there. I know we still have Windows 2003 and XP. I know that the goal is to get rid of all of them by the end of this year. I'd like to positively think that that's going to happen, but I don't know. Now, the request handling is important. What I did was I unchecked the box to allow the private key to be exported. I also chose enroll subject without requiring any user input. So basically, the certificates will enroll. It will not require the user to do anything, but it will not allow them to export the private key, so they can't put it anywhere else. Cryptography I pretty much left as is. And subject name, I have it issuing using a common name. In AD, I tried using the full path, or the fully distinguished name, which what it was by default, but the common name seemed a little bit better and more descriptive. and I made sure that manager approval was not required because obviously we'll have to be issuing certificates on multiple servers. There's one other thing. Okay. Issuing requirements. Here. On extensions, I did do one thing. This was originally copied from the normal user account. Um, this was copied from the user account. It did not have KDC authentication in it. I added that. The reason being is that Kerberos authentication is faster than normal user authentication. If the certificate uses Kerberos, it's going to be faster. And then finally, you remembered that I created a group for the users to issue certificates. This is that group, NetProtect Users Sync. So, and you'll also notice that what I did was I signed read rights and auto enroll rights, but you'll notice that enroll is unchecked. The reason is that I don't want users to go through and try to enroll for the certificate manually. I want it to only be as an automated process. So if the user tries to bring up the certificates for the local machine in question, go through the enroll process, it's not going to allow them to select this template. It'll only do it as a means of being automated.
Okay.
So, and then once I've put all this in, what I did was I just went to certificate templates, chose a certificate template to issue, and then chose OK. And that adds the certificate template to this certificate authority. Anytime that you make a change to a certificate template, you always want to remove it and re-add it so that it takes effect as quickly as possible. You'll notice another template in here, FADV admins. That is another template that I created, but that one's for us, and we can go through the process of enrolling manually on those. The reason I put that in there is because we will require keys that potentially have to be exported, so I wanted to leave that on. Now, from my client, if we go to certificates, and I request a new certificate. Oh, I did local computer. I didn't want to do that. And by the way, whenever you're requesting a personal certificate, you always want to use my account or current user. If you use computer should only be for, like, say, website certificates or something along those lines. But if you do it on your user, it'll actually integrate better with your browser. So we can hit next, the active enrollment policy. And you'll notice I only have one option here, FADV admins. That's because I unchecked the enroll feature on that certificate template. So I can't enroll. Yeah, I can't request a certificate for FADV underscore username. But one will issue for me because of auto enrollment.
How does the certificate look like then?
Oh, okay. Here, I'll show you. once issued, it actually looks like just like this. This is a certificate issued by our certificate authority. It tells you what it's capable of doing, and just so that you're aware, because of the kind of certificate that we have to issue, these certificates can also be used for email encryption. But that's a sort of a side note. But they can be set up in Outlook. It can be published to the global address list, and we can send encrypted email using certificates if we wanted to.
Okay.
All right. So, but that basically goes through and covers, sort of our infrastructure, that covers our setup as far as certificate templates. And if we look into ADFS, this is how we actually configure multi-factor authentication. An important thing is that certificate authentication has to be checked in both intranet and extranet. If it's not, then what will happen is that it won't show up as an option for multi-factor. This is where we define the group, and this is the same group that I set up in the certificate template, if you'll notice. This group is replicated to Office 365, and the box here is checked. And really, it's setting up certificate services in ADFS is as simple as adding this group and checking this box. So there's not a lot to it, but if the certificate services is not set up correctly in the background, none of this will work. And that's really the setting it up in the background is what I focused on in my Word document. And if you actually go through, you'll see it was not an easy task. One of the things that it boiled down to, or to let you know, getting a little sidetracked here, in order to authenticate using certificate services through ADFS, there are two ports that have to be opened. Port 443 for normal HTTPS traffic, and port 49443. 49443 is actually what certificate services uses. It has to be a separate port, and it cannot be also port 443. So on the ADFS server. That was something that I looked up because I wanted to see if I could separate it on its own IP address and just make it HTTPS, and that would have made it easier through the web application proxy. But I found out that in order for certificate services to work externally, port 49443 also has to be open external for our web application proxy server. So I've already put in a request to networking to get that port opened publicly. And once it is, then certificate authentication will work externally and internally. Currently, that port is only opened internally, and the way that our users currently connect to our ADFS servers is using DNS load balancing internally. They will DNS load balance between 74, 94, 37, and 38, which is Fed 100 and 101.
Dan, I think I have a question there. So
sure.
You say that in order for this to work externally, we need to enable the port. But internally, if any user hits this one, it goes to the internal IP and then it goes and resolves, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. Now the reason that it has. Go ahead.
So my question is this: like our goal for this entire configuration is to allow users only from internal to access OVA, right?
That's correct.
So in that case, why do we need to open this port from external?
Well, because to be honest, we always start out with a goal, but then there's always an exception to that rule.
Um,
It almost always happens, and I would rather have the ability for it to function externally as well.
right.
The
So
reason so that
let
it's a
us do
complete
this.
solution.
Let us do this. I agree that the exceptions are always used to come. So I definitely agree to that. So our exception here would be to remove that user from the group and give them actual OVA access if anybody need to access it externally. So we know the solution and we will be able to do it immediately if there is anybody comes to create an exception only for this one. So I think until then, let us not open it publicly.
Okay, well, I mean, it does no harm to open it publicly because we're only issuing certificates internally.
I agree that, and if
And
it is
here's
if it,
here's another reason is that we need to make sure it's working publicly because then this has the potential of expanding, and if it does, then it's good to just have it done so that
I don't agree to that because our initial scope of this configuration is to allow this only internal, and anybody if there is an exclusion to this one, that exclusion is to allow users to access email outside, right? So accessing email outside is just done by removing them from the group, and they will be able to access over normally like how we all do, right? So I know that it should be a complete solution, but looking into the scope of our requirement, I think we do not need to enable it publicly.
I I do disagree with you, but I will cancel the ticket.
Yeah, and anyways, like what exactly needs to be done in terms of any
Right,
request comes
but
that we need to explode it.
here's the thing is that when that request comes, I don't want us to be scrambling.
I got that, and we are actually defining the scope very clearly that this particular solution is required only for the internal users. We are not going to expose it to public, right? So that was our initial requirement, and that was the scope of this entire
Right,
requirement.
right, and I agree with that statement. But if we do enable this publicly, then we can also use it publicly, like for the IT team. We can improve our security by doing this.
I
And
think that is where AirWatch is coming into picture. So let us not worry about public in this particular scope. And definitely there is a way of doing it, and I appreciate that you have already found it, and it's just an implementation away in case if it is required. But for now, I think let us focus only internal.
all right, I'll do that. I still disagree, but I'll do that.
Sure.
Um,
So yeah, this is you are aware that how difficult it was to explain it to Jeff. So we have clearly mentioned it to him that this is going to be working only and only for the users who are coming in from a system which is added to FADV domain. And
okay.
if we enable it and if we expose it to public, that's going to be an exception for what we said.
Okay. All right. So
So
I'll just cancel the ticket. It's um, and
yeah.
I'll have that done today. Okay.
Let us do that, and appreciate that we have already found a solution, and we know how to do it in case if anybody comes and asks, we need the solution externally as well, right? So until then, let us keep that as a plan B, and
Okay.
we will execute only based.
Okay. That's fine. Sandeep, are you still there?
Yes, Dan, I'm here.
Okay. All right. You were breaking up a little bit there.
Yeah, I was telling like we will keep that as a plan B, and we will know like you know how to execute it, and immediately when there is a requirement based on approvals, we will enable that as well.
Okay. All right. It's not a problem
Mm,
at all.
that's right.
So okay. So anyway, that is, that's sort of multi-factor in a nutshell. So the two big ports that are required are 443 and 49443. Now we can actually, just to let you know, we can also change that port to something else, but it cannot be 443 is the big thing. So, and I didn't see a big reason to change it. So, but internally it is open. If we, and also internally to the 10.74.48.100, which is the internal IP address for the web application proxy server, that is also opened. So if, like, say, for other offices, for fed.fadv.com, they will either need to be pointed to, DNS load balance between the two systems, or pointed to the web application proxy server. Now, something important to note is that if they're pointed to the web application proxy server, single sign-on will not work for them, because the Windows authentication only works when you're actually directly touching the ADFS servers themselves. You're resolving internally directly to them. If you resolve through a web application proxy server, you will always get the website login and password. So just so that you're aware. And externally, that's the only way you can do it, is via forms. So
Okay.
So that's that. And so basically, just to let you know, if we, like say, for example, Manila, or we find places where they're getting the forms authentication and they're not, signing in through Windows, it's probably just how they're resolving ADFS. And we just need to change it in their DNS and they'll be fine.
What was the change you mentioned, Dan? I missed
Well,
it. I'm sorry.
okay. Basically, it's very important how you resolve the ADFS servers, Fed 100 and Fed 101. If you resolve them to the actual IP addresses themselves, then Windows pass-through authentication works through the browser, where you don't have to enter in your username and your password. If you're resolving it through the web application proxy internally or externally, you will always have to use the forms-based authentication, which is the website where you put in your username and password and pass through
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got that. This is, I used to look into that. So when I'm in VPN, I don't need to enter the password. When I'm not in VPN, I have to do that. I think it's clear. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So, but if internally, say somebody is going through the web application proxy to get to ADFS, then we just need to change their DNS settings so that they resolve fed.fadv.com to the actual IP addresses of the ADFS servers themselves, 37 and 38.
Are they 37 and 38 or 35 and 36?
No, 35 and 36 are the web application proxy servers. 37 and 38 are the ADFS servers.
Okay. Do we have one single IP for that, like NLB? Like F5?
No, we don't have a single IP address for ADFS in internal F5. We just use DNS load balancing.
Okay, so it either goes to 100 or 101.
100.
Like Fed 100 or Fed 101.
Fed.fadv.com, which is the site for ADFS, goes to this IP address 95.37 or this one 95.38. There are two A host records with these two IPs.
You're using a round robin DNS.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's clear.
So that's how we're resolving it. Now, I can't, to be honest, I don't remember 100% what all the locations are doing. I believe they're all slaving off of, for the majority, they're all slaving off of the Indianapolis NOAM servers where fed.fadv.com, or I mean, sorry, where fadv.com is hosted. So
You are correct, except Australia, Japan, and Korea.
correct. So I can't say how they're getting to fed.fadv.com. So, but if they're not doing a DNS round robin, then we need to set them up that way.
That's right. And the good part is Japan, Korea, Australia are already migrated and they all use Outlook to use mail. So
Right,
we
but
don't need to, yeah.
they're
In case if it is required, they have to be resolving to these IP addresses.
now just so that you're aware, they're going to present their own issue because they're still on a different forest than ours. So pass-through authentication is not going to work for them. They are going to be prompted every single time to put in their username and their password.
That's right. And there is a long-term goal for us to convert them to one of the FADV.NET Forest or subdomain.
Right, and once they're in, then at that point, pass-through authentication will work for them.
That's right. So maybe just as an expectation, by end of this year, we will focus that as well to get them into our forest.
Right. Mm-hmm. So again, I just wanted to mention those things so that they're on the call in case anybody else needs that information.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Now, I do want to take a little. Well, maybe we don't have enough time. Specifically, I want to have another meeting about this and go over certificate revocation lists because that single issue can actually stop a certificate authority from working and from certificate authentication from happening. Certificate revocation lists are very important and they update frequently. So in another meeting, because it is a very big issue and the configuration of it is very important, I could take over an hour just talking about that.
I just sent the exact same meeting on next Wednesday at the same time, so we can cover that in that also.
Okay, great. So, but at this point, do you have any questions for me?
I think I have no questions here. Like a couple of doubts I had, I think I cleared it while you explain it. What I will do, I'll go through the configuration, and I'm sure that I'm going to come up with questions when I go through. So, and Mukta, do you have any doubt?
No, Sandeep.
Okay. So, is it that you got everything, or you need more help to understand it?
I got half in the first session, and the one that I missed it was like a revision for me in this session. And yes, I would need more details on this one. So I am actually looking for the document so that I can go through all the options and also do some more, check more articles and read on it.
Yeah, so go through the documents. I think Dan did a very good job of explaining it and configuring it and making it into the production. So kudos to Dan. Let us go through the documentation and come up with questions so Dan will be able to answer that and we will be able to understand that. Right? So the goal is that you will be able to manage it yourself when there is a requirement comes and there is some configuration changes or adding users and etc. etc.
Really, ultimately, just to let you guys know, the way I've configured this and set this up, it's really going to just boil down to adding users to groups and adding computers to groups.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, but the thing is that in the background, the way I set it up is pretty complex. And And if you want to understand it from the bottom up, it's just going to take time.
Right. So there is one more thing we may have to do, Dan. I know that it's very simple for the help desk team to do it. Like all that they have to do is add the computer and user to the necessary groups. So
Right.
if we
And maybe
don't
just run
have
a
it,
GP update force.
that's right. So if we don't have it already, let us actually put that 3 steps into one Word document and we will send it to them so that tomorrow we will not get any blame saying that, oh, we were not aware of it, right?
Right.
And I will check with Sachin if
Sandy?
just like
Okay. You were breaking
it
up there.
is
After you
it clear
said,
now?
yeah, after you said I'll check with Sachin, you broke up.
Okay, so what we will do, we will check with Sachin. This is the document which is very straightforward and very easy for anybody from the admin team to do. And if this helps to understand and make sure that you will be able to do it, this is the document. Otherwise, if you really need somebody to walk through this one, we can create like 10 or 15 minutes Skype session with whoever you give us volunteers who will be in the meeting, right?
Right.
So once you have that Word document, maybe you can just send that to Sachin and copy me, and we will
Sure.
have a internal discussion with Sachin, right?
Okay.
Great.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. I think this is awesome that we do not our code for migrating the mailboxes. So we should be able to create batches based on the shared mailboxes and its users and start moving in with full-fledged migrations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome.
And
I think I'm good.
just to let you
Yeah.
know, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and work with the guys to get a complete listing of all of our VDI servers so that I can populate the group for the servers.
Yeah, it can be from our team itself, like
Right.
maybe like Prem or Prashant or anybody from the team who can help you with all the VDA servers names.
Sure. Because
And
literally, once we get that list populated, then all we have to
mhm.
do is just let the users know ahead of time and put them in the users group and then
Okay,
move their mailbox. I mean, it's going to be as simple as that.
right. So um, I had another question. Maybe like you can stop the recording. It's not relevant to this
Okay,
scope of
sure.
discussion. So